Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. He's the author of the book Beneath the African Sun, no other than Mr. Barry Maughan.
Nice to meet you, Daniel. It's I've been waiting for this. It's always gratifying to be on podcast, but especially yours.
Welcome to Book 101, Mr. Barry. And can you please introduce more about yourself?
Yes, well, I'm an octogenarian after a 40-year career in international broadcasting, mostly radio. They said I had the perfect face for radio,
Perfect
but I
face,
have
yes.
worked on four continents: Europe, Asia, was in New Zealand for a while, the U.S., and of course Africa, where I lived and worked for 6 years, plus traveling overland from Alexandria, Egypt, to Cape Agulhas, south of Cape Town, South Africa, in solo in a Volkswagen combi bus, half of which was done with a 1-year-old son. So I'm no stranger to the African continent, which I love.
Mr. Barryman, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. And today, let's talk about your latest book. Well, Beneath the African Sun. You write about existing between worlds. What did you lose to gain by never fully belonging to one cultural identity?
Well, one thing I did learn, Daniel, that beneath it all, given maybe the differences in ethnic background, religion, or whatever, we're all really the one because we all want the same things for ourselves and for our families. And this is what I found that traveling halfway around the world from the United States via Europe, that all the people I met in Africa shared my same goals and aspirations. And this was the most telling part of our journey. Whenever we needed help, there was always someone willing to help us. We could be out in the back of beyond, and people were always willing to give us half of what they didn't have. So I think the one thing that came across the maybe the most salient point that I gained was the oneness of humanity. And that was the most gratifying part of living and working in Africa for all those years.
Mr. Barry, how did speaking multiple languages shape your sense of self, and where did you feel most authentic? In your mother tongue or adopted tongue?
Well, obviously my mother tongue is American as opposed to English, as H.L. Mencken once said, America and England, two countries united by differing languages. But no, I try to learn languages as I went along the way. I'm not totally fluent in either French or the national language of Ethiopia, which is Amharic, but I had enough to get me around and get beyond the superficial and try to get down to the nub of really getting to know people on their level. The one thing I learned, Daniel, is the best way to do this, apart from the language, is to meet people at their level, not to arrive as a big shot or the well-heeled foreigner, but just to try to understand where they are at their stage in their life as they try to understand you. And I believe that this will give you the opportunity to form more lasting and mutually beneficial relationships.
Mr. Barry, as someone who observed cultures from periphery, what truth did you see that insiders might miss?
Now, the one thing I want people to get from my book is it's not an Mondo Cane type of book. deepest, darkest Africa type of thing. A lot of Americans, bless their heart, they think when they think of Africa, they think of the stereotypical Tarzan swinging through the jungle with Jane under his arm, and it's not like that. A matter of fact, during my journey, we encountered very little of the jungle part of Africa. Mostly, it was tropical savanna. But I found that by and large, wherever you traveled, whether it was in South Africa or Tanzania or Ethiopia or Egypt, people were basically the same. The only situations we ever encountered was with officialdom, crossing borders and things like that. But even then, um, I was astute enough to know that if you had all your paperwork intact and you were patient, then you could generally get done what you wanted to get done. So it wasn't them just going out of their way to be mean or hostile to you. It was just a matter of just, again, meeting them at their level and understanding that when you're in their country, then you are a guest in their country and you must act accordingly. And most of the time, you got what you gave, and you when you give what you got.
Mr. Barry, let's talk about the memory and sensory landscape. What single smell, sound, or taste from your African childhood still triggers the most visceral memory? How does it transport you?
Let me give you one example, going back and hearkening on what I've tried to inculcate so far. Uh, it's in one of my chapters called "The Oneness of Love." We were always trying to get that one space where we felt alone. Not that we were afraid or anything like that. We just wanted to, maybe in this case, have lunch without a thousand eyes on you. Well, you've quickly learned that in Africa, you can look at the landscape and see no one. But 5 minutes later, there might be a ring of people very non-threatening, but just very, very curious. And one of the reasons where we were traveling in a combi bus back in the 60s that maybe they didn't see all that often. And we had in tow a 1 year old who was a towhead, blue eyes, very fair skinned. And this was also maybe something that they didn't see all the time. Anyway, we were in an area frequented by the Dinka ethnic group, tall, Nilotic, dark skinned, and there was a mother with a baby about the same age as Kevin, our son, and she was mesmerized by the appearance of Kevin, and so she kept coming closer and closer towards us, and my wife, Suzanne, and son, Kevin, uh, realizing that there was no threat here, and she was just mesmerized, and she came over and just gently, lovingly touched Kevin's hair and his face, and then they exchanged their babies, and that was a seminal moment for me, harkening back to what I said earlier about the oneness of us all. She loved her baby. She would never do anything to harm Kevin, and vice versa. Suzanne loved Kevin, but would never do anything to harm her baby. And people have often said to me, Daniel, well, why didn't you take a picture? This was in an era where you didn't have the electronic tethers that you have today, sat phones and cell phones and GPS and yada, yada, yada. So all I had was a single end reflex. But by the time you get the f stop right and da da da, I just didn't want to spoil the moment. It was just one of those lovely moments that I just felt like I did not want to intrude on by trying to take a picture. So I think that encapsulated um, what we generally found throughout our travels, in all about 8,000 miles meandering through the African country, north to south.
Well, very well said and interesting, Mr. Barry. Truly, truly amazing book. And is there a physical place central to your story that no longer exists? How does its absence haunt the narrative?
Well, I can tell you the places that still do exist, so I'm not getting around your question. Let me go there first. Probably, I one of the chapters is on the 9 or 10 outstanding physical features that we saw along the way. One would have to be the pyramids. Then you have the Victoria Falls separating what was then, when we saw them, Zambia and Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe, um, and a lot of other Kilimanjaro, that the highest a single mountain without a chain in the world. So those were fantastic things. Out of the past, man-made would be the Coptic churches of Lalibela in Ethiopia. Not well known, but are under UNESCO protection because these are churches, huge churches, about 9 of them, carved right out of rock in the 13th to 16th century, and by just in an homage to God, um, as seen back 1,000 years ago, and the amazing thing. So uh, things that don't exist today. Mm, no, well, probably that don't exist today. Meeting the emperor, Emperor Haile Selassie, who died at age 84, and so he no longer exists. But most of the things that existed then, I can still go back and see, except for Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. Daniel Wolf once wrote that you can't go back. Well, it's true about Addis Ababa. I went back about 15 years after I left, and even by then it had completely changed. There was high rises where the edifices that I knew were gone. There were parts of the city that had been torn down to be replaced by modern structures. So it was not the place that I really could identify with. And reading and looking at photos of modern day Addis Ababa, I would be lost if I went back. So all things change. And I like to think in my mind of when I saw it, because this was the Addis Ababa that I grew to love during our 6 years there.
Mr. Barry, as a best-selling author, what are your short-term and long-term goals?
Well, you never stop writing. I mean, I'm now 84, going on 84, and I've got some other things that are on the horizon. Shortly after finishing the marketing campaign for this book, which I'm very proud of, my then wife Suzanne and I took a circumnavigation of my homeland of Australia in a combi bus or a camper bus, and I'd like to write about that. I've already got most of the chapters written. It's just a matter of rewriting some and freshening them up a little bit. And then I've been a poet who, yeah, maybe doggerel, but I would like to put that out there. So I've got those two projects, and they will probably hold me in good stead for the next few years. But you never stop writing. You never stop being curious as a writer and a journalist. You're always trying to learn more. And I believe, Daniel, in life, there's nothing static. You're either going forward or you're going backwards. And I always like to go forward.
Yes, and good luck to your goals, Mr. Barry. And well, looking for more success. And Mr. Barry, what will be your piece of advice for those people out there who want to be an author like you?
Mm. Don't fall into the trap that it's going to be easy. There's a lot of hard work that goes into it. And I think that's for a purpose because that separates the ones who truly want to be a writer, have something that they want to share with the world, and they want to do that passionately. You know, as a broadcaster, I used to tell my broadcasters, look, I can tell you mic technique, I can show you and speaking from the diaphragm, but I can't open up your head and pour in a pound of passion. And I would just say, don't sit there in front of your computer or typewriter, whatever you use, and wait for that moment of inspiration. Inspiration, you know, if you do that, you may never get started. Even if it's writing, Ba Ba Black Sheep, have you any wool? Just start writing, even if it's stream of consciousness. And if you hit a rich vein, then get it down. Don't worry about grammar. Don't worry about syntax. You can always go back and clean that up later. Just write and write and write. If it takes you an hour to mine that rich vein, then do it. If it takes 10 hours, stay at it until you've exhausted that vein because it may not come back again. Once you're on a roll, stay with it and then do it every day. Have a specific time or place that you go every day and you write. And bearing in mind what I just said, just get into it. Just start writing anything. Put something down on paper, and 9 times out of 10, something good will flow out of that.
Yes, thank you for that recommendation, Mr. Barry. And can you please recommend the books or book that influenced your journey?
Well, can't go far wrong with Hemingway. His style of writing, the conciseness of how he constructed his sentences and his train of thought will always be an inspiration to me. Um, I would love to just have a chat with him for half an hour and just pick his brain because for me, he's the quintessential writer the way I would like to be. My situation is I am too verbose and I fall in love with my words. And that's why every good writer needs an even better editor, one that doesn't change your voice, but will make sure that your verbosity does not get in the way of what you're trying to inculcate to others. So I would say, um, of all of them, probably Hemingway, and of course, you can't go far wrong with the likes of Shakespeare. You can learn from every great writer. It's not just one; it's bringing together all the best traits of writers that you love to read. But you must be a reader. You must not think that you have cornered the market when it comes to writing. You have to humble yourself and understand that yours will never measure up to the greats, but that doesn't mean that you can't strive for that. It's like you strive for the moon and you get a star, and that's how you should approach it. So I would say my number one person would be Ernest Hemingway, and I just read and reread and reread his books, and I just enjoy his art, and it is an art.
Thank you for that recommendation, Mr. Barry. And let's talk about the lost legacy and longing. The grief of leaving. Was returning home ever betrayal of Africa or vice versa?
I always tried to live in the moment. People say to me, well, uh, why didn't you do this? Or you should have done this, you should have done that. I can honestly say to you, Daniel, that every day I spent on the African continent, I was in constant search of things that I didn't know or understand, or people that I wanted to meet before I left the continent, regardless of where they lived. Um, Africa has a lot to give people if they would just take off the blinkers and not see it in stereotypical terms. I mean, the writers there are fantastic. You have a fountainhead of wonderful knowledge on various fronts. And as a visitor to the continent, I fell in love with it, but I also fell in love with the people, their ethics, their sense of family, of community. And there's a lot that can be learned in the West about how families support each other, conduct each other within the family, the sense of unity. And I try to ingrain this in my life as because both my children were born on the African continent, both in Ethiopia. And I just believe, Daniel, going off on a bit of a tangent here, that if people traveled more and they got to understand how people are not different from them, more than they thought, they're very similar to them. And if they can really understand that, you'd have less trouble, wars in this world. People understanding people regardless of their differences, then they will understand that they have to learn to live in harmony because they've got so much in common. And the best way to do this is to understand the differences and, in many cases, embrace those differences.
Very well said and empowering, Mr. Barry. And how does writing this memoir reclaim agency over a childhood shaped by forces beyond your control?
I I think God gives us certain talents, but you have to hone them. Now, if you ask me if I'm good at maths, economics, finances, heck no. But I knew how to write even before I entered my first English class. I just instinctively knew how to do it. Now, I had to hone that skill, but I had both the innate talent and the passion. Writing is wanting to share your thoughts with the world. Now, I do it in many ways. For many years, 40 years, I did it with my voice. I broadcast over the Voice of America for 25 years to Africa over the English to Africa service, and we reached millions of people each day. That's one way, but there's other ways too. And one is writing such a book as Beneath the African Sun. This didn't start out as what you see today. It just started out like, well, I wanted to make sure that my forebears and children, grandchildren, got to know a little bit more about me and where they came from and their legacy. And I was just going to run off a few copies and distribute it to maybe 20 or 30 people, family and friends. But then as I got into it, I said, no, I think there's more to it than this. And about 4 years later, this is it, working with the great folks at My Word Publishing, and my assistant Amanda Miller, who is she was the eminent gris, if you will, my muse. Whenever I got stuck or I needed a boost, then Amanda was always there in many guises. So you are formed by your past. I came from a very, very humble background in the outback of Australia, very, very poor, um, had a lot of setbacks as a youth. I was a stutterer, chronic stutterer, and overcame that to become an international broadcast for many, many years. And so I see people where they not necessarily are, but I can see inside of them where they should be in their life, what they can be. And my goal now is to help as many people as I can to attain their goals, whether it be in Africa or here in the United States or anywhere in the world. I'm always open to helping people attain their goals because we all have goals. Sometimes we just need people to help us get there. And I just want to be in the few years that I have left on this earth to be one of those people who can encourage them, show them some of my pitfalls so they don't fall into them, and just in general, help them become the best person that they can be.
Thank you for empowering us, Mr. Barry. And before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people, my other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and my book 101 review in fifth season too, comedy 101 in second season, and my food 101 in fifth season as well, geography 101 in fourth season, and my baby podcast law 101 and Mental Health 101, Love Letters in third season, and Movie 101 Review and Music 101 in its fourth season, and Science 101 and Sex 101 in its first season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcasts. Mr. Barry, whose absence, a person, a version of yourself, a lost Africa echoes loudest in these pages.
I would say my late mom, and that's probably an easy one. I am what I am today because of her. We didn't always get along. Our personalities were different, but she was one of 11 children, and she was the only one that escaped abject poverty to make something very great and affluent in her life. And she inculcated in me this feeling of you are as good as you want to be and to overcome obstacles. And she overcame many, many obstacles in her life, bless her heart. And I am what I am today, partially because of her. So I would say we all love our moms, but I adored my mom for that reason that she she would not let me fail. You're going to be the first one to go to college. She never had anyone go to college in her day. She used to give me hampers of food because I went nights and summers and from Boston University. And so she's my role model and happily so. She's been gone now 20 years, but it just seems like yesterday when we were sitting and chatting about my future and what she could do to help me.
Mr. Barry Maughan, thank you so much for sharing your best-selling book to the world. And can you please invite our listeners to support your Beneath in the African Sun?
Yes, well, you can go to my website, www.barrymaughn, BarryMaughan, all one word.com, or, Amazon, Goodreads. I'm there. And like I said, I've been very grateful for the support, the book. And I would just say this, he says modestly, You'll enjoy it. It's a good read. I think that you'll come away with a deeper understanding of the wonderful continent of Africa, and that's my main goal, is to give you an insight into the real Africa, not the one that maybe you've seen on movies or television. This is the real deal with warts and all, and give it a read, and you won't be disappointed.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Barry Maughan because if you support him, for sure, more and more and more empowering books like this to come. So, Mr. Barry, thank you so much for your time.
No, thank you, Daniel. And as we say in the business, more grease to your elbow. And I know that having listened to a couple of your podcasts, I can see why you're doing so well. So, best wishes to you. And here's hoping that we meet again somewhere down the road. And, we journalists always seem to do that.
Yes, indeed. And more to come, people. See you soon.